The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, Tech Bytes is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
Well, this is a really special edition of Tech Bytes because I know he's going to laugh, but I got my boss on the phone. I'm not supposed to be interviewing my boss, but it's not an interview. Let's call it a conversation with me and the boss. But we have Zarek Pearson, who is the CIO at Five Guys, but he's also the chairman, the newly elected chairman, by the way, of the IFBTA. But you've been involved with us for a while. So welcome to Tech Bytes.
Thanks, Rob. Happy to be here.
Well, okay. So let's just start off at the top. So, every chair comes in and you've been on the board for a number of years. First of all, why are you actually involved or passionate about the IFBTA? Because you got a lot of stuff on your plate. And so, it's not because I asked you to go do it or somebody else or the board elected you. So, why do you choose to spend your time in this area?
Sure. So I have a passion for the space, obviously. It's how I make my bread and butter. But more importantly, I love giving back to the industry as a whole. I love I'm a geek at heart, and sort of new and emerging tech always fascinates me, but also finding efficiencies in the tech that's there. I've always seen the gap between suppliers and operators and knew there was a need to fill that. So when this organization came along, I was thrilled, and I've been happy to be a part of it for years. The mission of the organization, right? The networking, the education, the promotion of technology in the food and beverage space. I think it's critical. And we're only going to get better together. And that is what this organization does.
So what are you spend, just like all of us, not just through the IFBTA, but just in your normal conversations, what are you hearing are the technology challenges and needs and requirements of the industry?
Sure. And let's dig into that for a moment, right? I'm connected to the industry in so many ways through this organization, through organizations like RTN, NRF, and others. And I speak to operators regularly. And we have similar challenges. And on those calls, you hear a host of things. Right now, obviously, the buzzword of AI, right? That is coming for all of us. It's sort of that elephant in the room. What's it going to do? What's it going to mean? That's top of mind for us, but I believe also every organization. So I don't believe we're unique. That's the biggest one. And with the status of the restaurant space right now, everyone's trying to get to know their customer, connect with their customer, and deep dive into what that relationship means and how to leverage it, right? So access to data, gleaning insights from that data, that's what everyone seems to be focused on right now.
Well, if we think about that for a moment, one of the key points of the IFBTA is that, we have said this in our materials, everybody has this equal seat at the table. And that's both the connection between operators as well as suppliers, because both, in our view, are equal members. Mm-hmm. And even though we serve an industry of operators, we are all in it together, as you've already said. So when we think about bringing them both together and being totally impartial across the board as an organization, what do you see are the challenges or the benefits for the supplier community who also are an equal part of the membership of the IFBTA?
Sure. So I believe that's where this organization is unique, right? I first joined the IFBTA as a member of one of the chapters, the actual DC chapter, one of the first. And to be able to sit down with suppliers and just have candid conversations over a meal, I loved the format. I loved how low-key the conversations were. And we had genuine conversations around solving problems and ways that we could help them. So there was never any sort of sales push. It was simply, let's talk together, let's work together, and how can we make this all better? So that format alone inspired me to join the org.
I mean, a lot of people have debated that because over time there have been other organizations and, suppliers have been welcomed in on a pay basis, pay to play kind of thing, which of course, everybody just gets memberships. So it's not one of those situations and there is no sales allowed in there. But is there something that because of that unique relationship, of everybody being equal and sharing information at the table. Is there something you personally have gotten out over the few years? Is there an instance or something that you can just say, boy, if I hadn't been brought together on this, that might not have happened, or I might not have heard about that?
Sure. So we were partnered with Comcast early on, but through conversations and meetings, that relationship only grew. Um, and we were the first to do a host of things with Comcast in the food and beverage tech space, right? So through
Is
that
that because you had
relationship, we got closer.
conversation at one of the meetings that helped to
Absolutely.
bring that together?
And the same with Hughes, right? We've partnered with Hughes over the years. And candidly, a lot of folks like to speak to things they may or may not be doing and how would that be received by the space. So I think candidly, we're just a low-key focus group for them on things they're trying to do and how they're trying to approach operators with new goods and services.
I got to tell you, from personal experience, because I try to get, and it's getting difficult, but I try to get out to each one of our chapters at least once a year. So I'll go to the meeting, and it's a very weird feeling because you're sometimes treated like, a special guest or something like that. I got to tell you, I've sat in meetings, and the AI subject, for instance, was one of the conversation points because the chairs and the members decide, help us to decide what they're going to be talking about, what that conversation is going to be about, what's on top of mind for them. And, I went and I learned a whole bunch of things just by who I sat next to, which was an operator, because we were talking about how do you personalize, which personalization seems to be one of those key things now. How do you personalize but keep your culture when you're using technology in front of a guest? And specifically AI and voice AI, really came up on that. And that was really, a takeaway that I now quote. When I go out there, it's like, if I didn't go out to a meeting, I wouldn't have heard it either, right?
I've heard a host of things, right? Around communication, and candidly, a lot of other operators have given me some neat ideas and connections, right? One of the sort of great things about the chapter meetings is they're also networking events with other folks in the space who have the same problems that we have. So I've personally gotten a host of solutions and vendor contacts and industry contacts just by attending those meals. That
Yeah.
on top of the fact I get to travel city to city, so I can actually join meetings in any city I'm in, and make new connections. It's been incredibly convenient and helpful.
Well, I think that's so you have the luxury also because of your position and your company is doing business around the world. We spent time in Singapore together, but you travel. I have the luxury, sort of. It's not a luxury, actually. I guess I have the requirement because I got an employment agreement that says I got to go do this, but of representing the association not only around the world in food and beverage, but also at participation of other events, publications, associations, and education. Um, that's a lot of things because our industry, as we know, is not just restaurants. And our thing with the NRF is with retail, and then the American Hotel Lodging Association, or what went on in Singapore or Europe in a couple of weeks. And so we really are finding it's a challenge, but we want to embrace everybody. And, even for you, I bet that can be a lot of fun because all of a sudden you get to go to meet with people and talk with people in other industries, which that idea sharing helps you for the IFBTA, but it helps you, in general.
Sure. And one like let's take NRF for example, right? A lot of the tech coming in our space in F&B, retail's an indication of that, right? So being able to partner with NRF has been great. And even things like NRA and all those other shows, the fact that this organization promotes all of their events and trying to promote technology across the board, I think the IFBTA is very unique, right? We literally take all comers and help everyone. So I think that inclusivity is probably one of the biggest benefits of this organization and why I love to be a champion of it wherever I go.
Well, there's a few other things because you and I have been traveling on a few things together. And one of the things, I know I got a lot out of, but I'd like to hear your perspective on it, is when you bring up things, by the way, like the National Restaurant Association show in Chicago, or you bring up local events or local chapters, it's not just for the big, vendors, the enterprise people like Five Guys is, but also it's down to the independent and individual restaurateur. And you can't do that unless you're doing the NRA show or South Carolina, or unless you're participating at events on the local level or supporting suppliers, by the way, who host events on the local level, because we're really in it for the single person, the one who's emerging, the franchisees, IFA, all the way up to the enterprise. And that's really a big, forget about international, right? That's really a big ask on us to be able to support it. And those partnerships are important. But I'd throw in there one other thing. You and I went to the Eat Okra conference. That was a very specific community. And so we're seeing communities that Eat Okra serves. We're seeing communities that other groups serve as well. And so it's down to the independent, the regions, and that's a challenge, but it's a great opportunity for the IFBTA and what we're doing.
Yeah, the reach is broad, but so is the need, right? So to your point, speaking of operators, large and small, and also vendors, large and small as well, larger established vendors and those new to the space or those newly emerging, right? The conversations help all. We take all comers, and I get calls from probably 2 vendors a week and 3 operators a week who I've connected with through the IFBTA just looking for help, and I reach out to them for help as well, right? So this has been an invaluable tool for me professionally. But again, I love the mission of the org. I love the outreach. I love the other shows and industries that we support. So I'm happy to be a part.
Well, so in your term, so you can just make sure that I do what I'm supposed to do in delivery, right? Over the next couple of years, where do you see the opportunities of the industry and where the IFBTA, in fact, can partner and assist?
Sure. So I think that's a pretty broad question. Let's cover the mission, right? The community we've already covered, right? Connecting with other operators, suppliers, shows, and other folks interested in driving the use of tech in this space. So that community front, obviously we want to support that, right? The networking piece, right? The chapter meetings, the events at all of the shows, right? There's no major show I've been to recently where the IFBTA does not have an event planned, right? Where we connect, again, operators and suppliers, some cases just operators. But at the end of the day, we're there to support those at the show, help make meaningful connections, and promote the use of tech in the space. The education piece, right? The certifications, the white papers, and all of those things, right? I think those white papers are invaluable, and the challenge is on us to stay current with those, right? So we are covering relevant topics for those in the space, both operators and vendors. I think that's key, and I think we do a great job of it, right? So I just want to continue promoting all those things. It is a big challenge. It is a lot of work, but it's a labor of love, right?
Well,
I know
and
you feel
some
the
of the
same.
well, I gotta say, you have to be passionate about it. I think at the end of the day, in what you're doing, and you're doing something good for the industry and the other industries that have food and beverage in it, which there's so many industries that cross over. I think that the challenge does seem daunting at times, but at the other end of it, what the real word here is engagement. And so what the board has, what we discussed at our annual board meeting in January is how to engage. And you know what? We can't really define that. Engagement is defined by the individual member. Whoever the member is, whether it's supplier, association, education, whoever that member is, it could be just reading that newsletter. It could be attending a meeting. Not everybody wants to go. It could be one of our celebrations of technology. It could be, going on to a virtual chapter meeting, which, so however they define engagement and what their ROI is, we want to have those resources. But one of the other things that I get asked all the time, and I don't think people realize this, is, and it's so obvious, right? The number one question I get asked about the IPTA is, how many members do you have? And I know they think that I'm avoiding them when I can't answer it, because I say, well, because of our partnerships and supporting the others in the industry, we're not there to take away members from the American Hotel Lodging Association or the National Restaurant. We're here to support their members. So we're actually, or NRF, 45,000 people, right, going to it, or NRA. So I don't think what people get is our actual reach, and that you can't do it on your own. You have to work with others. And so if we can provide those resources and networking, but have the interface with those channels like Eat Okra to their 18,000 restaurants, or whoever it is, that's part of our mission. They don't all have to be direct members, but they do indirectly. All that world and membership actually get benefits from us.
Well, so what's interesting is we evangelize all of those folks, right? I mean, that is our goal, right? To promote this space and technology in this space. Just this week, I've probably driven 4 operators to RTN, 4 to NRA.
And we publish their standards too.
Yeah, but NRF, I've driven folks to, and The RTN standards cost, that I think is one of the most important things in our industry, right? In promoting the use of tech, you have to have standardization across that board. So their mission of driving those standards, I think, is
And by the
key.
way, that makes
Yeah,
it easier for the startups and the smaller people.
for everyone, right? And two of my conversations over the last month were with startups asking how do they penetrate this space? How do they get connected to operators? And one of my conversations was right to the proper standards so that when they sign that agreement, you're up and running faster, right? You know what to expect. You can connect to the other pieces of that channel, right? No one's estate is flat anymore, right? It's just not the way it works, right? The POS is just another channel in all of this. So writing to those standards, streamlining for us connecting those channels just makes it easier. So again, our goal is to champion all these other organizations, and I think we do a great job.
Yeah, by the way, while people don't really talk about it, if you think about what the buzzwords are every year, okay, by the way, I would debate that AI is the buzzword of 2024.
Mhm.
The buzzwords this year, you know, I think people make the assumption now that AI is going to show up on the search bar. It's going to be part of what they have,
Mhm.
and it's behind the scenes. Now, that's not to say that a variant of AI like voice or one of the agentics or something like that is going to be the buzzword. But I remember the buzzword long time ago was integration.
Mhm.
And I look at those technology landscape maps and you see how many different applications. And that's where groups like RTN, that's where groups like HTNG in the hotel industry or Connexus in the C-store industry, really help our industry to be able to connect those pieces as they come up, which we can't always predict. But, that is also a role and a function of the IFBTA to help support those people that will make it easier for people to add, into the ecosystem as the clients actually drive it, as the customers do.
Sure. I think years ago when we broke up sort of the all-in-one players in the space to individual services, and everyone tried to be best in class, I think
Best agree.
the ease of integration drove that, right? And I think we're still there. I think now we're seeing some pushback that folks don't want supported quite as well. So now they're being very mindful and very specific in the integrations they will support and how meaningful those are. So that's where I think the RTN standards come in, right? Where you're only supporting one primary
Right.
integration and you can accept all comers, right?
And so, but what we are learning, to your point, is as we expand within other industries or as food and beverage goes into them, like retail, you need to go take a look at or C-store specific, the Connexus standards.
Mhm.
And as we go into hotels, because they have a bunch of
Yes.
different systems, the HTNG. And so each group have their own bodies. And so we want to make sure that we're connected across the board because we know that food service resides and food and beverage technology resides in all the other places. So, if we go forward and we think about some other learnings and experience, that you've gotten, out of it. So we have all the different technologies. We have the networking. We have the education that's out there. Um, what about the community itself? Where do you see the global community? Because, by the way, it's not all technology professionals
Mhm.
anymore. It's marketing people, it's accounting people, it's operations. Who knows who's really in technology today,
Correct.
right? So, how do you see the IFBTA and how do you see the industry working with all the different facets within an operation where technology touches?
Sure. So often when you're looking at technology connecting to a company, right, it's not the tail wagging the dog. The technology doesn't determine what the business is going to do. We're there to support the business's mission and its goals, right? The number one question asked of operators, right, or they say, what's the number one question operators or tech executives ask themselves in looking at solutions is who works with my existing stack, right? So writing to a standard, writing to the big boys certainly helps make it easier and makes you top of the
Mhm.
list for folks selecting your goods and your services. Um, but to your point, we are connected to every part of the business, right? Tech more and more drives the insight. And being in this space for 30 years, I can tell you, right, where tech was much more relegated to sort of post secondary conversations in the past, now we are the first things folks look at and talk about, right? Because no matter what system you find, you want the insight from that system and you want to relate that data to all of your other data points to make
And the
proper KPIs
executives
for
and
your
the
business.
leadership in organizations
Yeah.
recognize how important it is. I used to joke.
First and foremost.
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to joke around there was a slide in PowerPoint presentations used a long time ago that said, you got to be afraid of what's in the seat back pocket. And that meant that when the executives and leaders of our organizations got on a plane and they took that magazine out, and there's a sharper image in the magazine on the plane, which they don't do anymore, right? But they're showing all these technologies, and they're like, oh, the robotic, vacuum cleaner, the room. How come we're not using that in a
Yes.
hotel, or right? And so they'd always come back with those. Well, today, they're coming back to us, but they're coming back as our leadership because they're using applications on their phones, and they're saying, how come I can't do that? It's my expectation.
Well, so there used to be so many barriers to entry to those things. And now anything you find anywhere, depending on what it is, there's no real barrier to entry to doing it yourselves, right? Tech has gotten so integrated and candidly so cheap and so accessible, all these advanced features, you can appear as big or as large as you want. But furthermore, a small operator can make their ordering experience best in class and even better than the largest companies in the world, right? And tech is that great equalizer, which I think is amazing.
Well, let's just take a break for a moment. And I've got Zarek Pearson, the CIO of Five Guys, but more importantly, the chairman of the IFBTA. And we'll continue the conversation in just a moment.
With the rapid expansion of technology in the food and beverage industries, finding the right supplier can become overwhelming and complicated. To simplify this process, the IFBTA created Exchange. Exchange is a powerful search tool where users can easily narrow down their technology search and refine results by application type, geography served, department, and more. Browse resources and learn more about the industry's technology suppliers at exchange.ifbta.org. Now, back to the show.
Okay, so welcome back. So I'm having a conversation with my boss, Zarek Pearson, the CIO at Five Guys and chairman of the IFBTA. And we've been talking about all kinds of technologies and things and how the IFBTA is helping, and also why, he's been involved with the IFBTA. But as we think about the challenges in the thing, we've talked about where the suppliers come in. We've talked about the operators having a seat at the table. I'm sort of wondering down the road, two subjects, but I'll give you subject one and subject two. How does the guest fit into this equation? Maybe the IFBTA should be doing something that helps to educate the industry or the customer, or at least identifying what their trends and what their requests are going to be, and then helping our members to see that, because you can't be everywhere.
So I think our data does just that, right? I mean, we're connecting the right folks to the right conversations. Everyone's trying to manage the guest, and I get calls all the time of folks of how are you doing this or how are you doing that, right? In my role in the IFBTA, I think the guest is the most important part, and it's always a careful balance not to over industrialize that ordering experience, right? You still want that meaningful connection. You still want to drive engagement. You still want to drive visits. So we all walk that line of how much tech is too much tech. I don't think that's really a thing. I think it's what tech is the best tech to drive your mission and your goals, right?
And
Tech
of
can
course,
make it a seamless experience.
our involvement with things and covering things like CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, help us to at least identify where the consumer is going, because where the consumer goes, we may need to go because they ask us to do it. I'm going to think about this for a while, make an interesting subject for a board meeting as to how can we actually have direct conversation with consumers and their use of technology, which we don't do today. We get it after the fact to maybe help our members, to identify that. We've done generational before where we've had parents and kids. We've done those kinds of things, but there may be an opportunity there. As I think of the future and I think of where technology is going, I think the NRF show actually opened up our eyes that you could take a company like Middleby with their pizza bots and their robots. I mean, they're an equipment company. What are they doing at a huge tech show, right? So maybe, we evolve, because I'm finding more and more connected equipment connected to kitchens, that the IFBTA in food and beverage technology, what is that definition? It's probably going to include equipment, down the road in the word technology. And it's probably at some point, there's a food tech association out there, the technology of food, because that impacts the cooking and it impacts sustainability and supply chain, that, we're probably going to evolve.
Well, you've touched on it. You already mentioned like marketing, right? For example, right? Every marketing application or suite right now has a tech component. Bringing up Middleby told me that eventually every piece of equipment they sell, will have a screen connected to it and generate data, right? Whether that's operational data, whether that's maintenance data, whether that's power consumption, right? Can use data to get ahead of repairs or failures or make it operate better or how folks are interacting with it, right? Um, there's no part of the food and beverage space that tech is not coming for. And rightly so, we have a huge opportunity to make it better. And I think
You know, we went to NAFM. I went to NAFM last week, the North American Food Service Equipment Manufacturers. So it's a huge trade show every 2 years
Mhm.
in equipment. And of course, people like Middleby are there. What I've started to realize is that the manufacturers of equipment are also people that should be involved and members of the IFBTA, although they may not think of that first. And why? Because in the example you used, uh, while connected equipment in the traditional way of thinking is maintenance, energy cost, that's where most of their technology is communicated today. What they haven't thought about is when I go look at something like the Pizza Bot, which is making individual pizzas and putting stuff on there, you're now starting to collect data on consumer preferences because what kind of pizza did I make? What did they put on it? Right. And, uh, do they want thin crust or thick crust? And, how many people are ordering half this and that, and what are the combinations? I bet a lot of the manufacturers, including people like Kraft Heinz, who has their basic version of the free pour, for their sauces, are not thinking about that side of the data they're actually also collecting that can be used to give to the operators and their fellow vendors, trends and preferences.
Well, experience as well, right? How far did they walk? Where are they aggregating? How much time are they spending here? How long were they in front of the fryer? On average, how long are they in front of the fryer? Can we fix that, right? Can I be here and get an alert from a smoothie or a shake machine or a salad bot down the way, right? So at the end of the day, we still have to connect all of these disparate sort of operational tools, mechanical tools, robots,
And by
bots,
the
you
way,
pick it, and share that information.
if they're connected just this conversation itself, which is
Yes.
very typical of the ones we have, if they're connected devices in a total ecosystem within a store, I actually don't need to count the steps. I need to know the time it takes from after placing the order to go to the shake machine
Well,
and
you
then
also deal
dispense
with
that drink,
placement and
right?
design, right? Design of the restaurant. Where should things be?
And
Eh,
that comes off the cameras. People don't know that they can use their existing video feeds to actually
Yes.
not just do security, but start doing that.
Well, also, how are you consuming that, right? Wearables in this space, right? The tech glasses where the inputs you need are in front of your GM all the time, right? Our world is going to evolve and change. And I love the fact that we are trying to be ahead of it and we are also help driving that change, right? I
Well,
think it's
listen,
amazing.
I think that the second part of this conversation is very typical of the conversations that not only occur at the IFBTA directly or in our research reports or our webinars or whatever, but are also the ones that we support and we try to be a part of at all of those organizations, whether it's fellow associations, whether it's events, whether it's media publishing, whether it's educational, that really I think that this part of the conversation is part of the passion that you and I both have and that our members have, that our board have, our chairs have. But we're just hoping to bring that community together and you're in charge, for the next couple of years. So is there a parting thought that you want to leave just as far as where you see the vision, what people should take out and be in the IFBTA, at least during your leadership?
Sure. Well, so I appreciate the kind words, and I think you are very forward thinking, right? I love consuming all the information because we can't attend all of these shows, right? There's no way to do it, right? We have other things we're working on, but I love the fact that you go to those shows and post that content and you spot new and emerging technology and share that with the members, right? So often you are our eyes and ears on the ground at shows we'd never attend, but on
Not just
periphery
me,
they
but
are
we need
related.
to engage more of our members to do that as well,
Yes.
because you can't be everywhere, but you can share. And people go to unusual places, and you just don't know where you're going to pick up that idea. But if they can come to the IFBTA to share that in our community,
Yes.
to share it, I think we all win.
And that's the key word, the community, right? It's there.
It is about the community.
People
It's
are
not
there.
about a single person. It's not about our board. It's not about our chairs. It's about, all those touch points and people that participate.
I think, at the end of the day, connection is the key word, right? Connection and engagement are what we do best. That's how we do it. I want to drive that, but the connection and communication in our space, right? I love what we're doing. I'm passionate about the mission. I'm looking forward to promoting it. We have a lot of great ideas, and I'm candidly very excited just to be a part of it all. It's exciting.
Great. Well, it's been a great conversation for Tech Bytes, for me personally, and to officially welcome Zarek Pearson on as the chair of the IFBTA, started at the beginning of this year, but also recognize that we have a full board behind us of committed individuals from each one of the different disciplines that we work with. And I'm just looking forward to continue this conversation with you, but actually with all of our members going forward. So I want to thank you for joining us on Tech Bytes. And I know I'm going to be seeing a lot of you in the March Madness to come of all the different events.
Indeed, Rob, always good to see you. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of food service, hospitality, and retail technology, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, the exchange, an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share in conversations like the one we're having today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tech Bytes, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to taking our next bite of technology together.